Welcome to this first session here. We're going to talk a little bit about Vera PDF, definitive PDFA validation. I will offer a couple slides and then turn it over to my considerably more technical colleague here, Boris, who's going to tell you a little bit more, or a lot more, about the details of what we're actually building with the Vera PDF project. So, Vera PDF, building the definitive PDFA validator. This was not actually, ooh, go away. Don't need that. Nope. While the idea for PDFA validation has been kicking around inside the ISO committees for PDF and indeed in the PDF Association for a number of years, obviously it takes resources to do things like build software, generate test suites, and so on, and that was something that we did not have. We were approached in early 2014 by the European Union, who had created a project to develop definitive, as they termed it, that's their word, not ours, validators for not only for PDFA, but also for TIFF and for some video format that they actually didn't define originally and then did define later. And the open preservation, this project was generated on behest of archivists and librarians in Europe who have approached the European Union to say, you know, we don't know what we're getting with these files. We need to establish better software that will enable us to do our job of archiving critical government documents and so on and so forth. The Open Preservation Foundation got in touch with us, with the PDF Association, and we agreed to collaborate on a joint project to develop the relevant test suites to generate, as they would put it, a ground truth, and then software to make those test suites something that people can use very easily and readily for this purpose. So very, very briefly, why PDFA? I probably don't need to tell you this stuff, but I think it's worthwhile just breezing through it very briefly. Obviously, people are not going to paper, as we've just been discussing a bit in Phil's opening keynote. We're not going to paper nearly as much as we used to. Documents are becoming final and remaining electronic as they're final. There needs to be some way to archive that doesn't involve opening a file drawer and sticking a dead piece of a tree inside of it. I won't iterate through the number of reasons why we might consider a PDF and PDFA to be an important or a very valuable format for this purpose as compared to TIFF. That's probably relatively self-evident to the folks in this room. We know that PDFA, in addition to requiring that all kinds of things be present, it also restricts PDF to a variety of subjects. You can't put JavaScript in it and so on. And there are all kinds of reasons, therefore, why institutions that are interested in preserving these files for a long time are very interested in having the particulars of the PDFA specification actually available to them to impose upon, or at least to interrogate the files that they receive for storage purposes. So PDFA is a natural platform for building solutions that enable all the various features and functionality that people are interested in from archived documents. So validating PDFA matters because if you're going to try and sell people on the premise that there's something important about storing stuff, it's also, they need to be able to believe it. And when they find that there are differences between software, their ability to believe it is dramatically reduced. This is the fundamental reason why PDFA validation matters, so that people have some faith and trust in the documents that they're storing, and so that vendors are not inconvenienced and, in fact, damaged by the various collisions that can or that historically have occurred and indeed continue to occur in the present day to some extent. There are, of course, a variety of regulated industries that have not only a kind of a casual interest in archiving documents, but have legal risks if they do not do it correctly. In the aerospace world, in nuclear engineering, and so on, it's completely critical that documents be absolutely valid, really, in many cases indefinitely, in other cases, Boeing, for example, produces airframes, and their internal standards now require that documentation be good for the next 100 years. They have really nowhere to go but PDFA. But validating this stuff really matters. Users are not in a good position if they create something that they thought it was PDFA over here, and yet they validate it 10 minutes later with a piece of software that says it's not. They have no idea what to do with it. The error messages they get mean nothing to them. And all they can do is really curse at one vendor, both vendors, all vendors, the format in general, and that's not good for anybody That's not good for the users and certainly not good for the industry and the folks who develop this in an attempt to make money from selling the software. We know the PDFA flag is simply a flag. It's not actually for example, a signature that also says I'm only signing this because I've gone ahead and validated that. So the PDFA flag is something that's, it's a wonderful thing. It doesn't require a lot of processing to recognize it. On the other hand, it's a dangerous thing because, and there are mainstream software out there that will go ahead and allow the user to edit a PDFA file marked with a PDFA flag, and then save it, leave the flag all by itself, and give the next user the extreme misimpression that that file is actually PDFA conforming, when in fact it's just some garbage PDF file with a PDFA flag on it. So PDFA is complex, it's difficult, and all the more reason why we have to protect the users from the problems that can arise when non-conforming software encounters a conforming file or a file that claims to be conforming. So why Vera PDF? Why is Vera PDF a good solution for this? So PDFA is complicated, and establishing ground truth and generating broad-based acceptance of what the particulars of PDFA might be, it's a complex problem. And we're seeing that more and more as we go through the process with the PDF Validation Technical Working Group in the PDF Association. There are many questions that come up. Not all of these questions are completely obvious. Some of them remain contentious, even though they've been circulating now in the group for some time. Validation is a hard area in which to generate a lot of interest from the point of view of customer experience. They don't really want to pay for a validator. They kind of think that everybody should be making valid files anyway, else what are we doing to them, right? Why are we not making valid files if we say that we do? So it's very difficult actually to make an enormous amount of money from producing validation software and selling it. Obviously there are licenses to be sold. That's not necessarily the holy grail from a business point of view. It's very difficult for a commercial entity specifically to assert PDFA validation, and that's why many people who have developed, there are many validators for this, it's usually not the most important part of their business. And because it's very hard for any individual vendor, frankly even Adobe, to be able to finger a particular file and say that this is that we can definitively make any sort of statement about this. Now, it will be fairly argued that it's actually very difficult for any entity, commercial or otherwise, to make that assertion. And that's a legitimate objection to the possibility or the promise of Vera PDF, and one of the subjects that the Vera PDF Technical Working Group is actually wrestling with. What are we going to call this thing when it emerges? Do we gain industry consensus in terms of what it's capable of, what it means, what its answer? Do we like the error messages? Do we hate it? Do we like its function but hate the error messages? There are all kinds of possibilities, and we don't know what the outcome is going to be. That outcome will be managed and determined by the membership and the opinions that get formed in the technical working group of the PDF Association dedicated to this purpose. If this is an area of interest to you, I do strongly encourage you to get involved in that TWG for that purpose. If, and I say it's only an if, the working group proceeds to the end of this project, is able to generate agreement on the idea that this is definitive, then we may be in a position where we can state that the industry has accepted a certain thing, willing to call a thing definitive, whatever that means, and that would need to be qualified and so on. What happens when the software is proven wrong? Somebody shows up with a new test file, right? Many, many important questions to be answered. But in principle, the idea behind that animates Vera PDF is that the idea of industry agreement on the terms of the specification is achievable. And if it is achievable, then there are a variety of downstream benefits that will accrue to all of us producing software. If it's not achievable, we hope that this project will help teach us that it's not achievable, and then we'll have learned a very valuable lesson in its own right. So the Vera PDF software is targeted towards digital preservationists. Obviously, the ISO committee, we need the ISO committee to be interested and remain aware of this thing, and possibly even to get involved in it directly itself. There are a variety of modalities under which that might happen. PDF software developers have to buy in. If they don't buy in, if nobody wants to actually bother with this validator, integrate it, use it in their own internal testing or whatever, it's not going to mean anything to anybody. I'm particularly interested, and it's part of my remit as the executive director of the association, to get other industries that leverage PDF software involved and interested in the validator. So, for example, going out to enterprise content management software providers, document management system providers, and so on to say, really, you're doing PDFA? Well, how do you know? And what happens if your software disagrees with somebody else, and what do you want to do about that? So that's it. So promoting and promoting ISO standards adoption is very much part of the PDF Association's mission. If Vera PDF is successful at gaining industry acceptance, then it will become very much a part of the mission of the association to go out to these other entities that buy software and say, hey, it's about time to buy this software that can do this. So regulators are fascinated and very interested in this. When I talk to the National Archives and Records Administration monthly, every time I talk to them, they want to know, where's the validator? Where's the validator? Okay, there's not a government agency that's not fascinated by the subject. They deal with broken, trashed PDF files all day long. You know, some of their IT departments do very little, do some other stuff, obviously, but spend a lot of time dealing with the fact that users can't view it, can't create it, can't do various other things with PDF. So moving along here, because I want to turn it over to Boris as soon as possible. He's got much more interesting things to say about the technology of Vera PDF than I do. So lastly, the business case for PDF technology developers, I'd say Vera PDF offers the promise of reduced software development costs. If everybody was on the same page about PDFA in a very detailed way, that would make PDFA easier to support, easier to develop towards. If the validator was particularly easy to use, generated very useful reports, machine-readable reports, and so on, it will be possible to build this validator into software development systems. It would help you train new developers in doing the right thing with PDF. For the technology developers the ECM industry and so on, who are in the business of integrating third-party PDF technologies into their systems, Vera PDF will give them a relatively easy way to assess the options that they're examining. This is hopefully an incentive to the industry from a slightly different direction. And we hope that customers eventually, again, this is predicated on the idea that the industry actually wants to get behind Vera PDF, because if it doesn't, this won't happen. But we would hope that if it does, then industry would start to use the Vera PDF brand to make an assertion about their own software, and thus help customers understand how they can achieve their objectives with respect to reliability and so on, using that vendor's application. Who is, very briefly, the Vera PDF consortium? So there are two basic lobes of this organization, of Vera PDF. One, the digital preservationist community, with the Open Preservation Foundation taking the lead there. That organization has about 45 members in kind of different national level institutions, libraries, archives, and stuff, mostly in Europe. Digital Preservation Coalition, a whole bunch of about 300 different smaller archival institutions. Keep Solutions is an archive specialist software developer who is going to be reviewing the software on the basis from the archivist and open source perspective. In the PDF technology industry, of course, you know that the PDF Association and the members of who are participating in the TWG are taking the lead in terms of looking at it from our point of view. Dualab is our lead developer in terms of actually generating the test files in the software. So I'm droning on a lot too much here. Why is PDF validation so special? Well, it's there are a lot of these are the complicating factors about it, and I think you all probably know these things, so I'm not going to run through them right now. I'm going to move more rapidly over towards turning it over to Boris, and I think we are already into your stuff, Boris. So why don't I turn it over to you at this point?
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So I'll just continue by being more technical. So the task, as it's stated, is to come to a consensus within the industry that this is a valid PDFA document and this is a process to validate this. And the PDFA validation is really very special and very technical subject, requiring deep knowledge of PDF technology as a whole. Well, it relies on two different versions of PDF specifications, 1.4 and 1.7, which is also ISO 32000, and each of them is more than 1,000 pages long. PDFA itself comes with three versions, 3 conformance levels, and 2 technical core agenda for PDFA 1. So again, very many minor technical details, but each of them might trigger the validity of a PDFA document. Well, as mentioned by Duff, so the purpose for PDFA is the standard aims for very long-term preservation of electronic documents, so more than 100 years in some cases. And this means that the tools we develop would also potentially need to survive this long period of time. So potentially they need to be compilable and runnable in 100 years. On which systems we don't know, but this is the goal. And well, this all requires really deep knowledge of PDF as well as pretty careful open source development practices. And the way to start is obvious. So we have to start with test corpora. We've got some initial start, the existing corpora called the Sartre, Bavaria, BFO. In total, there are a bit more than 300 atomic test files. What we did, we just ran through all specifications and identified all potential test cases, and the analysis shows that we need at least 500 more test files to have a decent coverage for the specification requirements. And we are in the process of generating these files, and the first 150 new test files covering PDFA 1B already created and placed on GitHub. Just to compare, for XML specification, which is just 38 pages long, we've got the W3 consortium maintains a test corpus of over 600 test files. So actually, I feel that these numbers are heavily underestimated, and we'll come up with bigger numbers of test files in the end. So how does it work? Well, we analyze specifications. We read them literally sentence by sentence, and this is an example of a sentence from PDFA1 specification: string objects, hexadecimal strings shall contain an even number of non-white space characters, each in the range of 0 to 9, A to F, A to F. Even this simple sentence is actually might cause questions, and we had a discussion very recently about this. In particular, well, as it's written here, would even number be restricts the number of all characters or just non-white space characters, or are white space characters allowed or not allowed within hex strings in PDFA1? So this is like slight ambiguity in languages leads to slight ambiguity in the requirements, and we see in the end this leads to different interpretations and different results in PDFA validation. And you have to understand what is a white space character, and for this you have to go deeper into the specifications. In particular, again, would null be considered as a white space or not? And some decide that it is a white space, some think that it's not a white space. And again, reaching the agreement in this space is quite delicate procedure. So what we do, we identify such things and we create test files. Like in this particular case, we've got two failed test files as we think they should fail in our interpretation, and one pass test file, and this all is handed further for the analysis. So it's all created by a test engineer, placed on GitHub, and all newly added test files are put into so-called staging branch. I'll give the URLs later on at the end of the presentation. And then if there is ambiguity in the interpretation of these test files, this triggers the discussion on PDF validation technical work group. So this is how it works. We have in our possession a representative set of existing commercial validators. And well, we run our test files against these validators, see if they all agree on our test files. If not, we immediately send a message to the mailing list. We start discussing this during our teleconference meetings and try to reach the agreement. Sometimes this works perfectly okay. We reach the agreement very quickly. Sometimes this goes for half a year already in some of the questions. And still there are more opinions, and we are trying to find the ground to reach a consensus here. So it's something, well, a slow process. At some point we will reach the stage where we can announce a corpus as a release candidate, and again we would ask all participants of a PDF validation technical work group for formal acceptance of these test files. The next milestone is October 30, 2015, so just 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks, and we are hoping to release a candidate for a complete PDFA 1B corpus. But, well, I think the hope is not, well, we still have 2 questions where we don't have a consensus, and I don't know whether we would be able to reach it within these 2 weeks or not. Then it is also important to understand what exactly we are trying to validate. And we realize, and this is a feedback coming both from the industry and from the archivists, that the validity of embedded fonts or ICC profiles is as important as the conformance of a PDF structures to a PDFA specification. So while fonts and, well, other embedded data validation is outside the formal scope of the project, we, from architectural point of view, we have a plugin mechanism which allows to everybody to add your own small validation tool for, say, for image validation, for font validation, and report back to the system. And all this will be combined into a consolidated report in the end. In particular, the prototyping already includes some integration of tools coming from ICC consortium for ICC, from Color consortium on ICC profile validation, and Google code for validating TrueType and OpenType fonts. And definitely, we are looking forward to collaboration with experts from relevant technologies, as even the knowledge of PDF might not be sufficient to cover all border cases within fonts and color management systems. Yeah, well, that's what I just described. So what we do, we extract like foreign formats sitting inside PDF, pack them along with the data in PDF dictionaries, zip, and pass to third-party applications for further inspection. And these third-party applications may do whatever they want to do and report whatever features they found, whatever strange systems, whatever strange properties, or some systems. Well, for example, image analysis might involve the analysis of whether it's a loosey or looseless compression or some other data. We've seen cases when CCITT is quite often broken and not fully correct. And then report back to us. And I haven't yet mentioned any specific programming language or framework, and this is the first time here we see Java word, and this is just because we implement everything in Java, but I'll show you how actually the whole model is platform agnostic and language agnostic here. Yeah, so this is a validation model. So what we're trying to do, we are trying to come up with some formal syntax of understanding what we are going to validate. Or in other way, what are the validation profiles? How do we formally encode, how we go from English language in the specification, used in specifications, into formal requirements on a technical structure of PDF documents. And of course, if anybody of you has ever implemented validators, it's all based on a technique that you parse the document and then you try to code the requirements. So this was the very first feedback we've got from the technical work group, that there should be some intermediate language available to everybody to understand what's going on. And most commercial validators do maintain such language in the form of validation profiles, often closed format. So what we do, we also come up with a certain hierarchy of object types and their properties, and this is what we are extracting from PDF documents and what we are going to validate. And each validation rule just defines a certain JavaScript expression which uses these properties. And naturally, each rule has a direct link to the specification. It comes with an extract from the specification, links to further normative references, as well as links to our messages. So all these rules are combined into validation profiles and signed to be sure that this comes exactly from Vera PDF. Yeah, this just illustrates how it all looks like. So these are object types. These are all our object types aimed for just validation. We've seen all this. This resembles a bit the diagrams, UML diagrams, every PDF library comes with. But in this particular case, these are not exactly UML diagrams, and this is just something abstract, not linked to any programming language. Actually, this all is defined in our formal syntax we came up just for this project, for this particular task. The model, the syntax itself is really straightforward to read, and it contains just 5 or 6 keywords and 3 or 4 predefined types such as integer, boolean, string, and real number. And the rest is, so each object has either some properties, like course array has a property size, or it has further links to other object types. For example, array is contained of objects, course objects of whatever type. So this is encoded in a relatively small and easy to read and code documented syntax, accessible to everybody who has ever done any line of programming in any programming language. The validation rules themselves contain test clauses, such as this one, that the size of the course array has to be not more than 8,192 elements. And this comes exactly from the specification itself. You see this is an extract in the specification. And these are the normative references. One of them is that is the PDFA one itself, but it just says that the objects have to comply to implementation limits. So we have another reference saying where exactly these implementation limits can be found. And one of those implementation limits is exactly this one. And this is the exact interpretation of this particular condition or rule we've got. So altogether, PDFA standard, PDFA1B standard can be encoded in about 100 such rules. Not a big deal, and they're all accessible for inspection to all, well, slightly technical persons, let's put it like that. At this moment, there is no particular technology linked to this implementation. So whoever wants to implement the model just needs to implement the parser and implement the validation rules and evaluation of JavaScript expressions. For this, at that moment, this is totally platform agnostic, and we hope easy to review by external people. No programming languages, nothing here is really needed. Well, here's here are some more examples of technical workgroup discussions and how they end up in the formal language I've just described. So these are like unused resources. Do we need to validate them or not? If the resource is defined as a PDF document but is not actually used on the page description. Which versions of ICC profiles are accepted in PDFA1 standard? Well, do the implementation limits for the length of the name and string objects apply to their raw, unescaped, or decoded representations? These are all typical technical things. Well, we were lucky to reach that conclusion about all these things. So, in particular, we had a lengthy discussion, and it was some ambiguity here. But it was then formally accepted that PDFA1 allows for any ICC profiles of major version 2 or below. And in the end, this is the exact line in our validation rules that reflects this decision. So if you might have weeks of discussion and just a change of line in the validation role, but this is how it all goes. So the first time where we really need a specific programming language is when we have to parse PDF documents and extract these properties from the documents. So this is where we start using Java library, and our initial idea was that we can survive with PDFBox, which is a well-proven open source Java parser. However, as we are dealing with very specific licensing requirements coming from archivists world and European Commission, all code we deliver has to be dual licensed under GPL v3 and MPL v2, as according to them, this is the only way to make sure the code survives for hundreds of years. So in case of PDFBox, that's Apache license, and there is no way to change this. Even if this is a perfect open source license for developers, it's not for legal people and for the purpose of this project. So our promise to Preforma is that we will have to develop our greenfield parser as well. And we are hoping that it will not introduce any new ambiguities and errors in there. But I'll talk to you, I'll show you how we are coping with code quality, actually. So development processes is what we have established to fully comply with open source conditions of the project. These are the standard words we all use probably in, not just in open source, but in closed environments. So GitHub is used for both source code and the test corpus. Travis manages the continuous builds, Jenkins manages automated tests and deployments, and Sonar is used for code quality, and here are the links. Everybody can go there and see what's in there, including the full source code of everything, including validation profiles, models, Java implementation. And anybody of you can see what was the last result of the latest build and when it was. So this is how we control, this is our typical build flow. It has three important steps at each commit. This is like builds and unit tests. Second goes ISO validation tests. This is where we run validation tests against all existing corpora, and at the moment there are over 300 of these validation tests running with each commit, and these numbers are growing, so we'll probably be soon close to 1,000 of tests against the proven corpora. And the code quality, this is an automated Sonar analysis of the source code to pinpoint some strange places before this triggered errors. As soon as all these three steps passed, the automated system deploys the latest GUI application as well as updates the Marvin repository automatically. And again, this is not just something taken, designed in Illustrator or Photoshop. This is a picture taken from this link below, above, and colors change real time. Okay, code quality, that's just to give you a hint what it is. That's a standard picture. So those who have seen Sonar before, that's a standard dashboard. And there is a huge number of various parameters here, and this is how it all analyzes our source code. And in particular, we've got certain quality gateways indicating that something went wrong. In this particular case, one of our quality gateways is that there should be no blocker issues reported by Sonar. And like here's an example of a condition when this quality control check fails, and our developers have to go and fix this even before anything else happens. The release schedule and where we are now. So we are proud to reach already the stage of version 0.4 release, which includes a working validation model and an initial unverified PDFA 1B validation profile with about 100 roles, prototyping of PDF feature extraction, as well as the prototype for plugin system, And this all has been tested against Isartar Bavaria and our newly created Vera PDF corpus. And it all comes with a simple GUI just to play with the tool, but more essential, it comes with reviewed CLI interface as well as an API which can be integrated into third-party systems. And again, according to all open source tools, you always have access to the latest builds, available at downloads veraPDF.org. This is a screenshot taken from our GUI application. Pretty simple. You choose a PDF file, you choose a validation profile, and validate everything. What you get is a report which exists in XML format and in human readable format, HTML in this case, but the plans include also a PDF report generation as well. Yeah, the report, speaking more detail about report generation, so we do generate the results of validation in the machine-readable validation reports. It's in XML format. Error messages, we decided we are going to build not just a set of localizable error messages, but a real wiki explaining what each of these errors means on less technical level, naive level, and what would this potentially mean for a manager of an archive. So this is a work in progress, and again, everything is available for review and for inspection here. Feature reports generated along with the validation report. So validation report keeps an information about whether the document is valid or not. Feature report is some extra information we extract from the PDF document, and this potentially can be used further in the line if specific institutions have more restricted policies. Some of them might, for example, forbid the use of DCT or compression or JPEG image compression or JPEG 2000. This can be checked later on based on just feature reports we provide. And as I mentioned already, third-party tools add extra information, can potentially add any extra information to these feature reports to report more detailed information about embedded formats inside PDF documents. What else? We are doing also a limited metadata fixer. So sometimes files are perfectly okay, but they just log the metadata identifier. So we see that probably less than 1% of the files in the world is marked as PDFA, but maybe many more files are valid PDFA documents, but simply don't identify themselves as they are. So what we are doing, what we are going to do, we are checking everything except for metadata, and if it's all fine, then we add this metadata identifier saying that's a perfect PDFA document. So policy checker is a tool required by library institutions, and this is exactly checking extra conditions based on our PDF feature reports. Plus, we have to interoperate with other performer providers doing video and audio validation. In particular, we have to come up with a shell that accepts all file types, not just PDFs. And if you see these are TIFF images or some MKV video streams, then we pass these documents to other validating parties. And they have to do the same. This means that we also have to provide the REST APIs that will be used to communicate with our engine from the external world. Timeline, this is what's going on and where we are. We are on time on all milestones we had so far, and a nearest one is planned for the end of this month, and will include the release candidate for PDFA 1B support, including plus some prototyping for other PDFA versions and levels. The release candidates for all versions will be, well, we hope to make them available by the end of February. And actually, starting from November, we've got so-called redesign phase, where we are supposed to hand over all our source code for inspection, get the feedback, and do redesign, take the external reviewers' feedback into the account. So this is really a challenge of working in this open source environment. Plus, so it's first of all PDF association and PDFA Vera PDF technical work group monitoring us from PDF technology point of view and assisting us in resolving ambiguities. But also there is the Archivist Society doing review of what we are doing and telling us whether this is exactly what they want to achieve in that. Plus, there is a complete open source society of everybody who wants to join. The end of the development phase is the end of 2016, and then there's an acceptance phase where there will be formal tests running and formal acceptance. It's really like signing off the project. So we would be happy if you get involved into this project, and there are many ways to do this. You can subscribe to our mailing list and start participating in the discussions, as some of you do already. You can join our meetings happening about once per month now. That's where we discuss some particular cases, and I usually report what was done during the month. You can inspect the candidate test files we have already on GitHub and test against your own implementations, or you can share your test files. You can report whatever issue you see, and this can be reported directly on GitHub, so don't hesitate to do this. That's all taken seriously. And you can, of course, develop a specific plugin doing some specific validation, and we see some already willingness to do this, at least in case of images. Well, and of course, you can think and provide our ideas how you would want to use the product as soon as it's available. So feel free to get involved, and please get involved. Yeah, I think that's it. Questions? Yeah.
This is great stuff. One thing I want to ask is right now there's a tool for Acrobat.
Yep.
The pre-flight tool.
Yes.
Their conformance verification.
Yep.
So is that kind of similar to what we're doing here, or what's the difference in conformance versus validation?
This is the same tool. This is one of the commercial validators. So what we are developing is not new from commercial point of view. There's a number of commercial validators available, and Adobe Acrobat has one of them. And actually, this is one of those representatives in our set of commercial validators. So we test all our corpus files against Adobe Acrobat and see whether they agree with us or not. And in particular, Adobe employees are actively participating in our discussions, and Leonard is one of the most active participants. And we also have an informal war that if there is a certain agreement reached and Adobe behaves incorrectly, this will be fixed in some future versions.
So yeah, if I get involved in it,
Yep.
I'd like to. So what we do is when we create PDFs that are PDFA,
Yeah.
I want to use both the Acrobat version and
Yeah.
partially some of the validation. And if you see differences, and that's the report into to get them.
Yeah, for example.
Okay.
Yep.
I already voiced some of my concerns with so-called definite implementations.
Yep.
And is the goal of this project to kind of build an industry consensus?
Mm-hmm.
Because eventually, as you say, there's a timeline to your project. Eventually, it will end.
Yep.
It is unlikely that we will reach 100% industry consensus on what's valid PDF. So I'm wondering, is there any
PDF or PDFA?
PDF, but even just PDFA, like PDFA is like in general, like PDF, what's valid PDF, what's correct rendering for PDF.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if, even if your timeline is covering things like PDFA 2.
Yeah.
It's or 3.
Let's go back.
Yeah, it's all of them, all conform cells.
I see. So
Just it. It's too sensitive.
I guess like there is no actually industry buy-in in this. Like, and is there a way we can use parts of your system? Like, for example, you have already the continuous integration banking going on. You're already using like third-party validators as part of the process. Why not make this kind of more process-driven development, where we don't have like a definite implementations, which might not be possible eventually, and we have something that's more open for the industry.
More open from which point of view?
Well,
So-
it's unclear. It's unclear how we are buying. How is this project a definite so-called implementation? Like, what it is giving it the authority of definite? Why is this more definite than, let's say, Acrobat? Or like any other implementation?
So yeah, I can. Okay, go ahead. Yeah. So first of all, the test corpus. We do hope to reach a consensus on the test corpus, and I don't think that's something too ambiguous, too ambitious for us. That seems to be reasonable, and even if files are validated now by Adobe in a different way, as I mentioned, if the consensus is reached, we do hope that they will change their implementation.
But the test corpus is not giving its the validity. The industry needs to reach consensus that this particular test corpus is
Right.
okay.
So we don't, the mechanism, there's no physical programmatic mechanism right now for assuring industry consensus, right? Your suggestion about how we could open the building process, the integration, we see new test files, we automatically test them. Somebody wants to integrate this directly into their software building. Those are fabulous ideas, and I would like to see us drive, I want to expand Vera PDF to do PDF validation in general. That would inevitably, I think, encounter and benefit from some of the ideas you've been suggesting. The mechanism, such as it is, and to use the word mechanism is inappropriate here because there's nothing mechanical about it. The idea, the method by which we would hope to achieve industry consensus currently is by virtue of the agreement within the TWG. So it's a very organic, very kind of human-to-human process. And we couldn't think of a way around that in the present time, simply because any disagreement that's going to occur technically is going to get resolved by humans as we start this thing in any event. We could write something and call it definitive, and we could build a bunch of mechanisms that would suck in a file and spit it out, or not, right, and give it a label. But unless the various people who are in charge of these various implementations out there feel that they have the opportunity to discuss this disagreement, to come to understand the other perspectives, and to make a decision that, that you're going to have to go back, somebody has to go back to their developers and say, you know what, crap, we got to do this, we have to do this. Other people say, we won, because we don't have to change anything. That's all very ugly or good for different people in different ways at different times. There's not a lot we can do about that as the people who are trying to create an industry consensus. But there's nothing about this project that's worth much at all unless we achieve that consensus.
Right. So the core of the project is building the industry consensus, not the definite implementation. I mean, there is a Platforma project that is a completely separate thing.
Yep.
But the main kind of value proposition here to us is that we are kind of building so-called definite agreements, like regarding the behavior. That's the core of the.
That's the core of our idea here. It will be, the idea is to actualize it in the shape of a piece of, in a test corpora, first and foremost, and then in software, to say, this is how the industry, this is what the industry agreed on, right? Because if we just say, yeah, we agree on something, but we don't have a thing to point at, we're not sure really necessarily what we did agree on.
Right.
So now I would prefer a highly mechanized process for doing this, and it wasn't, we had a budget of this and not of that, and so, we have to make some decisions in what we're doing. Now we're building. We wanted to make sure that we have a budget for something that really did produce a product that was in fact interesting. Still, reasonable question, will we achieve it? And I'm not saying we will or we won't, but the objective of the process is to hopefully get, at the end of the day, come next third quarter of next year, that all the people around the table at the TWG say, even if it hurts some and it helps others, and say, yeah, I can't object. We answered this thing. We have to answer it somehow, even though it's ambiguous. But we answered it this way, and then if everybody can accept it, then we've achieved something. If we create a situation where there's a war at the end of the development of this software, well, then we'll still ship something, and Preforma will still get a product, but we won't put our name to it and say it's definitive by virtue of the PDF Association. That's up to the TWG to decide. Because we can't act against the interests of we wouldn't want to do something that some significant portion of the industry says absolutely not. I don't know if that really answers your question, but I'm not sure I got a better one.
Yeah, all good. So another question then. So once the project is over, and we have the definitive implementation, and then we find another test files where we don't agree on, will the implementation not be definite anymore?
It's software. There are bugs.
Okay.
I mean, it's a question of what we agree to say, right? If we all agree that there's a bug, and that we come to version 1.01, it's in the nature of software that we say that. It's in the nature of now, this is very, very hard to put the foot down and say, this is the last and final. Do we need it? Yes, we do. How do we achieve it? But by getting closer and closer to it, I'm not sure. So it's not a great answer to your question, but I think it's the only answer I could give, in a sense. Is there another question back there? Yeah.
No, I was just going to say another way to answer the question, I think, is that having at least a reference implementation for a validator is the only way to drive ambiguity out of the standard. You have to have something that's a reference implementation where you can turn around and say, at least this group of people, whether that's consensus or just a set of thought leaders, can say, this is what this means. That's the only way to drive the ambiguity out, and that'll occur over time. And
as a function of faith and trust.
Well, exactly.
That's what we can't blow.
Exactly. So I hope the project never ends. I hope it just keeps growing and adding more and more PDF flavors to it.
I think we've come to the end of our allotted time period here, because some folks here want their next session. So Boris and I are around the rest of the day, happy to talk to you about this project, and really hope to see you involved in the TWG as we continue. The slides in the movie of the presentation will be posted, yes. Thank you all very much. Thank you.